Zilia's turquoise eyes, wide with fear, drank in the harsh landscape of Earth. Gone were the lavender skies and bioluminescent forests of her home planet, Xylos. In their place stood a monstrous city of metal and glass, the air thick with unfamiliar scents and the constant drone of machinery. She had only heard tales whispered by the elders, stories of a distant planet inhabited by beings of greed and cruelty. Now, those tales were her reality. Zilia's capture had been swift and brutal. A group of humans with their cold eyes and even colder weapons had descended upon her village, their spaceship casting an ominous shadow over their once peaceful lives. She remembered the screams, the chaos, the desperate struggle of her people against a force they couldn't comprehend. They were rounded up like cattle, their pleas for mercy falling on deaf ears. Zilia, still young, barely an adult by Xylosian standards, had been separated from her family, her heart shattering with every passing moment. She had no idea if she would ever see her home, her family, ever again. Xylia was sold to a wealthy human who ran an intergalactic menagerie, a collection of exotic creatures from across the stars, displayed for the entertainment of the elite. The menagerie was a sprawling complex, filled with beings from countless worlds, each one more unique and fascinating than the last. The wealthy patrons would stroll through the corridors, marveling at the diversity of life, oblivious to the suffering behind the bars. Her cage was cramped and barren, a stark contrast to the lush forests she used to call home. The air was thick with the scent of despair, and the walls seemed to close in on her with each passing day. The once vibrant colours of her world were now replaced with the dull greys and browns of her prison. She longed for the feel of the soft earth beneath her feet and the gentle caress of the wind on her skin. The food was bland, the air stale, and the constant stares of curious onlookers made her skin crawl. They would point and whisper, their eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and pity. She felt like a specimen under a microscope, her every move scrutinized and judged. The isolation was suffocating, and the loneliness was a constant ache in her chest. Days bled into nights, each one a torturous reminder of her captivity. The passage of time became a blur, with each day blending into the next. She would watch the stars through the small window of her cage, wondering if anyone out there remembered her, if anyone was searching for her. The nights were the hardest, filled with dreams of freedom that would shatter upon waking. The other creatures, hailing from different corners of the galaxy, spoke in languages she didn't understand, their eyes reflecting the same fear and despair that gnawed at her soul. They were all prisoners, each one with their own story of loss and captivity. They would exchange glances, a silent understanding passing between them, a shared bond of suffering. Zilia retreated into herself, clinging to the memories of her home, the warmth of her family, the gentle rustling of the Xylos wind whispering through the trees. She would close her eyes and imagine the vibrant colors of her world, the sounds of the forest and the laughter of her loved ones. These memories were her sanctuary, a place where she could escape the harsh reality of her captivity. One day, a man entered her enclosure. He was tall and lean, with kind eyes and a sadness that mirrored her own. His name was Daniel. He moved with a quiet grace, his presence a stark contrast to the harshness of her surroundings. There was something different about him, something that set him apart from the other humans she had encountered. He spoke to her softly, his voice a soothing balm to her raw nerves, and treated her with a gentleness she hadn't experienced since her capture. His words were like a lifeline, pulling her back from the brink of despair. He would sit with her for hours, sharing stories of his own world, his own struggles. In his presence she felt a glimmer of hope, a faint light in the darkness. Daniel was different from the other humans she had encountered. He saw beyond the exotic, the alien, and recognized the sentient being trapped within. He treated her with respect, acknowledging her pain and suffering. He would look into her eyes, and she could see the empathy and understanding there. It was a connection that transcended the barriers of language and species. He brought her treats, small trinkets from the outside world, and spent hours talking to her, trying to learn her language, her story. He would bring her flowers, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the dullness of her cage. He would share his own experiences, his own dreams and fears. Through these interactions, a bond began to form, a fragile thread of trust and understanding. She began to look forward to his visits, finding solace in his presence. For the first time since her capture, she felt a glimmer of hope, a possibility of a future beyond the bars of her cage. Daniel worked as a caretaker in the menagerie, tending to the creatures, ensuring their basic needs were met. Every day he would walk through the vast enclosures, feeding the animals, cleaning their habitats, and making sure they were healthy. It was a routine job, but Daniel took it seriously, knowing that these creatures depended on him for their well-being. But he yearned for more, for a world where beings from different planets could coexist without fear or prejudice. He dreamed of a society where diversity was celebrated, where the unique qualities of each species were appreciated and respected. Daniel often found himself lost in these thoughts, imagining a utopia where harmony reigned supreme. He saw the injustice of their captivity, the cruelty inflicted upon them for the sake of human greed and amusement. The sight of these magnificent beings, confined and miserable, weighed heavily on his heart. He couldn't help but feel a deep sense of guilt and helplessness, knowing that he was a part of this system that exploited and oppressed them. When he first saw Zelia, her turquoise skin shimmering under the artificial lights, her white hair cascading down her back like a waterfall, he felt a pang of sympathy. She was unlike any other creature he had ever seen, her beauty and grace captivating him instantly. But it was her eyes that truly drew him in. Her eyes, the color of the summer sky on Xylos, held a depth of sadness that resonated with a hidden pain within him. They were windows to a soul that had endured unimaginable suffering, and Daniel felt an inexplicable connection to her. He couldn't shake the feeling that their fates were somehow intertwined. He was drawn to her, his heart aching for the suffering she endured. He couldn't stand to see her in such a state, and he vowed to do whatever he could to ease her pain. Daniel knew that he couldn't change the world overnight, but he could make a difference in Zelia's life, even if it was just a small one. Daniel began visiting Zelia's enclosure more often, bringing her small gifts, a smooth, iridescent stone, a token of his affection, and a symbol of his promise to her. He wanted to show her that she was not alone, that there was someone who cared about her and her well-being, a fragrant flower that reminded her of the Xylosian moonlight blooms. The flower's delicate petals and enchanting fragrance brought a small piece of her home to her, a reminder of the life she had been torn away from. It was a gesture that spoke volumes, a silent promise of hope and compassion. He would sit by her cage, talking to her in soft, soothing tones, sharing stories of his own life, his dreams of a better world. He told her about his childhood, his family, and the moments that had shaped him into the person he was today. In return, he listened to her stories, her voice a melody that filled the empty spaces in his heart. Zelia found herself opening up to him, her initial fear replaced by a cautious curiosity. She had never encountered a human who treated her with such kindness and respect, and it intrigued her. Slowly she began to trust him, sharing more of her thoughts and feelings with each passing day. She told him about her home, the beauty of Xylos, the warmth of her family, the pain of her capture. Her words painted vivid pictures in Daniel's mind, transporting him to a world he had never known but felt deeply connected to. He could almost see the lush landscapes, hear the gentle whispers of the wind, and feel the love that bound her family together. She spoke of the Xylosian language, their customs, their deep connection to nature. She described the rituals and traditions that had been passed down through generations, the songs and dances that celebrated life and the universe. Daniel was fascinated by her culture, and he hung on to every word, eager to learn more. Daniel listened with rapt attention, his heart swelling with empathy and admiration for her resilience. He marveled at her strength, her ability to endure and remain hopeful despite the hardships she had faced. In her, he saw a glimmer of hope, a beacon of light that guided him towards a better future. He knew that their bond was special, and he was determined to protect it at all costs. As days turned into weeks, a bond formed between Zelia and Daniel. Their initial interactions were cautious, filled with uncertainty and curiosity. Zelia, an alien from the distant planet Xylos, had been thrust into a world she barely understood. Daniel, a human, was her unexpected guide in this new reality. He represented a glimmer of hope in her bleak existence, a reminder that not all humans were driven by greed and cruelty. Daniel's actions were a stark contrast to the harsh treatment she had endured since her capture. His kindness was a beacon in the darkness, a small but significant light that began to illuminate her path. His presence eased her loneliness, his kindness rekindling a spark of hope in her weary heart. Zelia had been isolated both physically and emotionally, but Daniel's genuine concern and empathy began to break down the walls she had built around herself. Daniel, in turn, found himself captivated by Zelia's spirit, her intelligence, her unwavering hope for a better tomorrow. Despite the hardships she faced, Zelia never lost sight of her dreams. Her resilience was a source of inspiration for Daniel, who had grown disillusioned with the world around him. He was drawn to her strength, her resilience in the face of adversity. Zelia's determination to survive and thrive even in the most challenging circumstances was a testament to her character. She was a warrior in her own right, fighting not with weapons but with hope and perseverance. He spent hours studying Xylosian language and culture, eager to bridge the gap between their worlds. Daniel's dedication to understanding Zelia's heritage was more than just an academic pursuit. It was a gesture of respect and a desire to connect on a deeper level. One day, Daniel brought Zelia a gift, a datapad loaded with images and videos of Earth's natural wonders. It was a small token, but it carried a profound message. He wanted to share with her the beauty of his home, to show her that there was more to Earth than the pain she had experienced. He showed her vast oceans, towering mountains, and lush forests, hoping to share with her the beauty his planet had to offer. Zelia was mesmerized. The images on the screen were a stark contrast to the sterile environment she had been confined to. They were a reminder of the wonders that existed beyond her immediate reality. She saw the similarities between Earth and Xylos, the interconnectedness of all living things. The landscapes reminded her of her own planet, the places she had once called home. It was a poignant moment, a realization that despite the vast distances and differences, there was a common thread that connected all life. For the first time since her capture, Zelia felt a flicker of hope. It was a fragile feeling, but it was there, growing stronger with each passing day. The possibility of a new beginning, a fresh start, began to take root in her heart. Maybe, just maybe, there was a place for her on this alien planet, a place where she could find peace, maybe even happiness. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. She had lost so much, but perhaps there was still something to be gained. And maybe, just maybe, that happiness involved the kind human who had shown her compassion in her darkest hour. Daniel had become more than just a friend. He was a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the bleakest of times, kindness could rekindle the light within.